There are numerous websites out there on the internet that boast, literally boast the benefits of going solar. They'll talk about how much it's going to be better for the environment, but they also claim that it increases your home's value. Okay. And is that always necessarily the case? That's what we're going to discuss a little bit. Fair warning for some of those solar owners or enthusiasts out there that may be caught off guard by this discussion. Stay with us to find out more. But before we get into that, let's do some introductions. I'm Rob Keilman.
I'm Joshua Britt.
There you go. We're real estate agents and investors. And in joining with us today are two special guests. We got Brooks Sinnen. He is a real estate appraiser, as well as Patrick Cecchini. He is also both from the same company, SinnenGreen and Associates. Guys, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
All right. So let's get into this first claim, okay? This first claim comes from convertsolar.com. I'm going to go ahead and put that up on the screen so everybody can see it. And this comes directly from their website. They claim that when you get solar panels installed, you're automatically increasing your home's value. Typically, homes with solar panels are worth about $20,000 more than homes without solar. According to Zillow, a home with solar panels can sell 20% faster and have an increase of 4% equity than a home without solar. I don't necessarily agree that as a licensed real estate agent. Do you, Josh?
Absolutely not.
Let's turn over to the appraisers here. One of you guys, what do you think of that?
I think it's a bit misleading. Certainly would like to see their studies or their research, what kind of due diligence they did on that. But Pat, you want to touch on this?
Yeah, I think it's important to approach it as we do in appraising with every variable. And it's important to understand that we have to apply an adjustment, but we also have to support that adjustment and prove that adjustment. And we were talking earlier, I always approach it from a who's your buyer standpoint, right? Any agent that sits down with the buyer talks about what's important to us, and you've got your set of criteria that you're out there when you're showing properties to these potential buyers. As an appraiser, we like to look at it and say, all right, if there are 10 buyers for each home and they were to sit down and write their top 5 or top 10 list of wants and desires, where on that list the solar panels fall? And I've done several classes here lately, and when I pose that question to agents, I've probably asked 200 plus agents in the last 3 weeks. I've had 0 hands go up when I've asked them, how many buyers have you been with that have, that was a big want and desire for their search. And
you guys are agents. How many buyers would you say when you're showing properties or entertaining in the market?
Every buyer I've ever worked with, 0 of them have asked me for solar panels on a house.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Never had it. Never had anybody say, hey, solar panels are going to make the difference between me buying this house or not. Never had it.
Well, and I think it goes back to their original focus is, and they approach the selling of these solar panels with number one is let me tell you how I can increase the value of your home. And so I think it's, from a misleading standpoint, and I've had recent calls from solar panel folks, and that was how they led the conversation. And I told them that, you called the wrong person, how long you got, let's go through it. And so, for us, again, when we have to support our adjustments for an in-ground swimming pool, for a remodeled kitchen, we have to have data that supports those adjustments, and we just don't have it in this market locally. And I would say some of these studies do note California studies, and, I think maybe it's, real estate everywhere is all localized, from location statewide to different sections of the state, but even here locally, different neighborhoods might support different adjustments, whether it be in-ground swimming pool, decks, patios, but solar panels is one of those that it's hard for an appraiser to be able to identify that variable as the reason a property sold for significantly higher than the one that sold down the street.
So just to preface this conversation, Pat's talking about adjustments. Within the scope of appraising, there's 3 approaches to value: the sales comparison approach, the income approach, and the cost approach. The most popular to your audience and most everyone is the sales comparison approach, or comparison analysis, in which we use something called a paired sales analysis, or what would we derive from the market. So we use the paired sales analysis to derive our adjustments on a grid in which we compare multiple properties to a subject property. Now, these properties are all similar to the subject property with one variant, different physical characteristic, feature, amenity, etc. And that's how we theoretically derive our adjustment or go through our adjustment process. So when he's referring to adjustments in the market, that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, so that approach, basically the sales approach, that's when you basically take that subject property. Let's say if you're a homeowner out there, your house, and whatever house is in, in your general area that recently sold that's like yours.
Correct.
That's about right.
Yep.
And just compare the prices versus the condition of the house, and that's where you come up with a value, do adjustments based on bedrooms and features.
That's the theory or concept.
Yeah, and I, not to, nerd alert, but So we're comparing apples to apples, right? Red apples to red apples. You'll find that there's only a handful of things that actually move the needle. And I always refer to those as your market drivers: condition, square footage, location, obviously very important. You've got functional utility, bedroom, bathroom count, garages can be something that moves the needle. At the end of the day, there are a lot of other factors that don't necessarily move the needle that might enhance your marketability, but don't necessarily, we can't define it and say, all right, and isolate the variable to say, because you've got a newer roof, your value is increased by X, So for us, I'd love to tell you we're that good. We're not that good. So at the end of the day, it's more looking at what does move the needle, what's important to that buyer within the market, and that's how we derive our adjustments.
In your experience of appraising homes, have you given guys? I understand how you can't come up to the value, and based on kind of your discussion here, but in your experience, have you given a house $20,000 more just because of solar panels?
Never.
Yeah.
I'll be on the record here. I have done it once. I've made an adjustment for solar panels. It was considerably smaller than that. They were owned, and which we'll talk about here shortly. But I got more kickback from the underwriter at the mortgage company than I've ever had from any other appraisal I've done, solely based on the value that I gave to those solar panels. So, it's hard to be received from as an appraiser to establish value. It's certainly even harder to be received from that mortgage lending and that underwriter that could be reading this, in Michigan, wondering where did you derive that adjustment. So any adjustment we make, we certainly have to support it.
Yeah, so when we're talking about adjustments, there's adjustments for swimming pools. Does this house have a swimming pool? Does it not have a swimming pool? On your appraisal forms, is there a dedicated field for solar panels?
There's a dedicated field for energy efficient items, in which most cases you would apply any kind of solar panel or geothermal system or any kind of net zero home or energy efficient home or item or feature. Yes.
Okay, yeah, because the reason why I asked that, this is what I find in most cases, the people who actually do put solar panels on their house, they also go to the extreme and they'll put the geothermal system in, they'll put the energy efficient heat pump in, all those things. So how are you able to break that out as saying it was just the solar panels? Is there even a way to do that?
So you would apply an adjustment on the actual sales comparison analysis, and then within the body of the addendum on the report, you would just discuss it and comment and quote and explain how and why you made that adjustment.
Yeah, and I can take it a step further. So what we're referring to is, when homeowners, approach and say, well, I've got a new HVAC, I've got a new roof. When I talked about being hard to isolate one individual variable, when you've done, the new windows, the new roof, the new HVAC, that's something that's a little bit more tangible that can be fit into that market driver category of upgrades to the home, condition of the home, and that's something that could potentially move the needle. But when it comes to strictly solar panels, again, it's just not being received here locally, as far as for us to be able to make an adjustment for that individual item.
It goes a little bit, I hate to put the tinfoil hat of conspiracy on here, but before I get into that, let me talk about our local power company, Dominion Energy. That's in Virginia. I don't know what everybody else's is throughout the map, wherever you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast from. But on the website of Dominion, okay, And by the way, I reached out to them for comment. I reached out to their media relations department, called them on Friday, and they have never responded to me when I asked them the questions. And it relates to getting money back from unused solar energy. Never got a word back. So sorry, audience, I can't deliver that to you because maybe you guys can comment on that. You guys heard anything about that where you could sell your excess solar panel energy back to a broker or
I think it's either one or the other now. I think you used to be able to in maybe a decade ago ish.
I can't find anything on that.
Yeah, I think you used to be able to recycle the power through your meter, and then any excess energy you used to be able to sell to a broker or the company that installed your system. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think those systems that have been installed are still grandfathered in today.
Well,
but
it would have been nice for Dominion Energy to let us know,
Yeah.
but sorry, Dominion Energy. It looks like you just don't want to get into this discussion. But according to Dominion Energy's website, according to the 2006 National Renewable Energy Laboratory Center, mind you, 2006, this is an 18-year-old study, it has been found that installed solar panels to your home can increase its value by roughly $15,000, even if the system is medium-sized. Bigger homes can increase their value by nearly $30,000, making switching cleaner energy even more appealing. Still, you guys don't buy it? $30,000 for a medium, or $15,000 for a medium, possibly big size system. 30.
that's a lot. What's the average time span for someone to stay in a home, or the average lifespan of a mortgage?
That's what we were talking about earlier. The cost of or the time it takes to recoup these costs. You know, where I cringe is as an appraiser, I get calls from realtors saying, "Hey, do you have a cheat sheet? You know, what's a bathroom worth? What's a garage worth? What's a pool worth?" And I always tell them, you know, it's different in every market. And you gave an example of an in-ground pool earlier. You know, an in-ground pool in one neighborhood might be worth $0 to $5,000. In another neighborhood, it might be worth $20,000. And again, it goes back to, you know, what I mentioned earlier is who's your buyer and how important it is to that buyer within that market. If you're in a, you know, $200,000 to $300,000 neighborhood and they were to sit down with their realtor, I can guarantee you that an in-ground pool is not going to be on their top 5 list of wants and desires. But if you take a similar buyer or another buyer and they're in $1 million plus neighborhood, that in-ground pool is going to be a lot higher on those folks' list, and you're going to see a little bit more of a market reaction or more of a premium to that in-ground pool. And I think the same logic would apply here, but again, it's just not being received here locally to where we can kind of isolate it and say this is exactly what that solar panel's worth.
So there's not a consensus on value across the U.S. It could be worth more in California versus Virginia.
It's definitely worth more in California. A, it's a warmer climate, and B, the utility bills are substantially higher than Virginia. Massachusetts, New Jersey, same thing. Florida, not so much because I think their utility bills are down a little bit respectively. Texas, I saw, shot up quite a bit, which I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, how I look at this is you may be lowering your energy bill, but the money is just going towards the interest that's being paid on these solar panels, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later.
That's a good point.
But you know, the rates that they're charging for these solar panels is kind of mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into that. But you know what boggles my mind is that the solar panel thing is being sold so hard by all these websites that I go to, not just because of I understand it's environmentally friendly. I get it. But how they come across the value-added propositions on top of it, besides the environmental factor, they're trying to show you that it saves you money somehow, whether by reducing your electric bill or getting rid of it. But even our own government website, I went to the Department of Energy's website, okay, and they said buying a solar system will likely increase your home's value. A recent study. Now, they highlighted a recent study. I hate it when people are too vague about that. Oh, a recent study. Well, I found that recent study. The recent study is from Berkeley Lab from 2013. It's 11 years old. And it includes a researcher, a home appraisal expert, and 7 appraisers from 6 states. Sounds like you could have cherry-picked that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying, not saying it's politically motivated, but man, it smells like it. I'm just saying. Well, anyway, those guys, 7 appraisers, that researcher and that appraisal experts, so 7, 8, 9 people, they found that that solar panels are viewed as upgrades, just like a renovated kitchen and a finished basement. And home buyers across the country have been willing to pay a premium of about $15,000 for a home with an average size solar array. And they said there's evidence, let's say where the evidence is from. Homes with solar panels sell faster than those without. In 2008, California homes with energy efficient features and PV were found to sell faster than homes that consume more energy. Keep in mind, these studies focus on homeowner-owned solar arrays. So maybe it does sell faster in California, but that's not necessarily the case. If you're an agent in California or some sort of real estate expert in the field, please leave a comment below. Let us know what you're seeing about these solar panels in California. So, okay, I've been in real estate since 2018. I have not seen homes sell faster for solar panels.
No, I've actually seen the exact opposite. Like, I've literally seen people walk in, I've been in open houses where the payoff amount for the solar panels was sitting on the counter like, this must be paid for by the buyer at closing. And everybody is like, whoa, I'm out of here. Like, I'm out. Like, this isn't even an option. It's $30,000, $40,000 that you want the buyer to pay off these solar panels. No, and even most loans won't even allow the buyer to pay it off.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't know what you've seen. I've seen prices owed, like these debts owed on these panels, anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000.
Yes.
Is that where right around where you've seen?
Literally just had a deal last month in December. VA buyer couldn't buy the house because the seller thought that the buyer could pay off the panels, and the buyer can't pay it off with a VA loan. Seller had to pay it off, use $36,000 of their $40,000 in equity that they were supposed to get back. They walked away from the deal with $4,000.
So basically, if they have this $40,000 debt on solar panels, the problem is if a buyer is using a loan, if they take out another loan to acquire these panels in order to buy the house, that's going to screw up their debt to income ratio.
Yes.
And they may not even get qualified for that loan anymore to buy the house.
Correct.
The loans will not allow you, these mortgage loans will not allow you to rope in that debt to put another $30,000 or $40,000 on top of whatever they're already borrowing.
Yeah.
Because the loan to value ratio would be completely off.
Yeah. It would be over 100%.
Yeah. So you can't go over 100%. The only one you can go over 100% is a USDA at 101.
Yes.
So that means that the seller, in order to sell his house, that homeowner, either the buyer's going to have to come up magically with $40,000, $30,000 out of their own pocket to buy it off separate, or they're going to have to take it out of their equity in order to sell the house. And I'll tell you what, if you only owned your house for less time as it would to be paying the panels off, like say you got into an area, you were here for 5 years and you went to go sell, but in the meantime, oh, by the way, you bought solar panels. Oh my God, you might be breaking even on that house or losing money.
Yep, that was the exact same thing. The person had bought the house 5 years prior. They put the solar panels on 3 years prior, and they didn't even recoup their investment into the solar panels. The buyer walked away with a free solar panel system.
Well, and that, to your point, as an appraiser's perspective, that's common. It's probably it's an outlier when they are owned. Because the first question we ask as appraisers, if they've have solar panels on their house, are they leased? Are they owned?
That homeowner comes out and says leased, you're like, whoo, thank you.
Well, I mean, either aspect. I mean, then it falls back to, and I hate saying the consumer needs to do the due diligence, when they're sold on this bag of goods, that it's going to increase your value, because I've had homeowners look me in the eye and say, what are you talking about? How are you telling me they're not going to increase the value of the home? But I would say, to your point, that becomes kind of the norm, to where these things aren't paid off in probably 8 out of 10 transactions that I do appraisals on. So there's always that factor of, all right, who's going to assume the payment? Is it going to be the owner? Is it going to be the buyer? And, oh, by the way, can they still qualify for that loan, wrapping that in on the back end, with that additional payment?
Because these financing deals, more times than not, transfer to the buyer. You're seeing a lot more deals become killed or null and void. They're done because they essentially can't qualify for the mortgage and the second loan.
And how's that going to help your house sell faster?
Exactly.
So I think when we're talking strictly from an own standpoint, again, back to my analogy, if you got 10 buyers for every home, right? I'm not out there doing it for number 10 or number 1. I'm out there doing it for the individual in the middle, the typical buyer who, oh, by the way, that's who, as agents, you market to. And the important aspect is the lender's loaning to the typical buyer. So you've got a situation where if the typical buyer, given 2 red apples, and as you said earlier, in some cases it's deterred your buyers from buying a house with solar panels. I can't sit down and look at the data and say, all right, if we have 10 potential buyers, 9 out of 10 are going to buy that house with solar panels first because of the solar panels. The data is just not there.
Yeah.
And in some cases, there's buyers that are scared because of the maintenance that's involved with these solar panels, thinking, all right, I'm going to have these solar panels. They're 10 years in, but I'm going to have problems down the road. I think, and I don't know if you looked at any of the studies, most of the warranties run up to about 20 years. I saw was about typical. So I just think look, the older I get, the M word becomes bigger, and that's maintenance, in doing anything to my home, because you just don't have the time, you don't have the energy to do these things. And I think that's just adding another big M to your roof, going down the road, and it just doesn't end with you put them up there. You never have to worry about it. You get the break of energy costs. That's not the whole story.
No, matter of fact, I saw a couple, I don't know what you saw also, but I saw if the roof is more than 20 years old, they'll recommend that you replace the roof.
Yeah.
So now if you have a roof, you got to put a new roof on. That's what, $5 to $10,000, depending on the size of your house on average.
And I think Brooks called them out saying that the same solar panel companies also replace roofs.
Yeah. Well, apparently, if you have a warranty on even if it's a new roof, if you have a warranty, a lot of these contracts for the warranties clearly state that, it's null and void if you install these solar panels, or the same company has to install the solar panels. The roofing company has to do the solar panels.
I can see why, though, because you think about it. Anytime, and we had, home inspectors on before, and and the last home inspector we had on the podcast, we can leave that in a link as well. He's talking about that anytime you have a protrusion through the roof, it could potentially cause a leak later on. Mm-hmm. So, and he made mention of satellite dishes, right? And think about when you have all those solar panels across your roof and you're putting in how many bolts through the roof, and every time you put that intrusion on, that's a potential leak hazard. We even see that with vent pipes that come up that have to have the proper flashing and everything like that to prevent it from leaking.
Yes.
So my question is, and I don't know if you guys said it before, but what if the roof needs to be replaced? Now, somebody's, roofing companies won't necessarily touch it. So now you got to have a technician come back out and take the panels off. Now, I've also seen on these websites that say, no, that's okay, but we include one free removal. Okay, well, if Johnny Solar isn't around in 10 years, when you go to replace that panels, Mr. Consumer, Mrs. Consumer, who's going to be out of pocket to do it? Because that warranty no longer exists because that company's gone.
Yeah, and that's actually a big problem. I mean, I was going to get into it in the financial aspect, but there are a lot of these solar panel companies that have gone out of business, and now the solar panels aren't working. But you took out a loan to pay off these panels with this lender, and this lender doesn't care if the panels are working. They want their money, so there are homeowners who are forced to continue making payments on solar panels that don't work. The company who made them or installed them is no longer in business.
Let's talk about the finances, because when I started doing some research on it, I got so mad. I was a little hot potato because I thought that these things were more vicious than payday loans.
Yes. So I went to a website, solarreview.com, right? Mm-hmm. And they brought up GoodLeap, which GoodLeap boasts itself as the #1 point-of-sale lender in America. GoodLeap offers 3 solar loan options with typical APRs between 5% and 9% and ranging in terms from 7 to 25% or 25 years. Now, all of their loan options are centered around the tax credit, meaning in every option, you have to apply the tax credit to the loan. They give you an 18-month period of time to file your taxes, and they tell you that you're going to get this money back in your income taxes. But when you read the actual federal solar tax credit, it says, no, it's applied as a dollar for dollar, reduction of what you owe on your taxes. So
Not on the panels. What you
Not
owe
on
on
the panels.
taxes.
They're not stroking
They're
you
not
a
sending you
check
that
to say,
check.
hey, here's that check for those solar panels you
No.
put on. But the lenders, Goodleap, they require you to put that 30% down, whether you got it back from the government or not.
So so everybody knows here that tax thing that's 30% or 26%, wherever you read it, it's not a stimulus check coming to your house in your mailbox. Okay. That's not going to happen. It's a tax deduction. But let me ask you this. I mean, we're not tax professionals here, but what if you're getting a tax refund? You don't owe any taxes at the end of the year. What do you get for those solar panels?
There was something in there where it said that it can be rolled over. It was a non-refundable tax credit and can be rolled over into subsequent years.
Sounds like he's playing devil's advocate now.
Yeah. This is interesting.
Yes. But I'll tell you what made it even crazier when I got to digging into the financial aspects of this a little bit further, right?
Yeah.
It says Goodleap offers a solar loan with terms between 7 and 25 years and can offer rates at APRs of 1.99. However, the interest rate will typically be closer to 5 to 9% range, assuming the loan has a dealer fee. So I said, well, what's this dealer fee? Because I think this is important for people, right?
Yeah.
So dealer fees can add anywhere from 20 to over 35% of your loan principal to the total cost, right?
Oh, man.
So then
It's not even the
says,
panels. It's just
yeah, this is
installation.
the dealer fee, right? So this is what the dealer's charging you. And so they're charging you up to 35 and can be over 35, but they're expecting you to get a 30% tax credit back and pay that 30% on the loan. But it says the APRs will be higher if you don't have a dealer fee. Now, I think about the principles of lending money. If I'm assuming risk as a lender and you come to me and say, hey, I want to borrow $10,000.
yeah.
Okay, I assess the rest. And I say, okay, I'll loan you $10,000 at this rate. But if you say you need $20,000, well, then I can't loan you $20,000 at the same rate. I won't loan it to you at a higher rate because, therefore, it's a higher risk to me. But they're saying that if you don't have the dealer fees, then the APR will be higher.
It doesn't make sense to be a lower amount.
Should be the exact opposite.
Right.
So if you are even considering buying solar panels and this isn't a red flag to you, I don't know what is. Like, this is I equated it to this. Like, if everybody remembers the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air,
Yeah.
if a salesperson came to my house and told me this, I'd be Uncle Phil in their ass right up out the house, right out the front door. They would be jazz flying. Like, this is the biggest red flag. And if you continue to move anywhere further in this process, you need to have your brain checked. I'm sorry. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Sounds like a Best Buy credit card.
Like, it gets even crazier.
Oh, yeah.
So listen, there's one loan option where they will allow you to refinance your total house and include the sale
made my
of the
skin
solar
crawl, bro.
panels into the total mortgage. So now they're essentially allowing you to borrow.
Cashing out your equity. That's what they're doing.
And it's assuming you have equity.
Assuming you have
Yes.
equity.
But not only that, the principles of it doesn't even make sense because they're basically saying, hey, look, the value of this is how they're justifying the value of the house. They say, look, your house is $300,000 right now, right? These solar panels cost $40,000 to have them installed. We're going to refinance your mortgage loan. We're going to take first position and we're going to finance it at $340,000. Now, if your house is not worth $340,000, they just put you upside down on a mortgage.
How is that possible? Are they just basically doing their own type of financing? It's not a government loan?
They are their own financer. It's their money.
So
It's like a private. It's like a private loan.
LTV.
It's like 2006, 2007 all over again.
It's a private loan. No one's going to question it because it's a private loan. Like if you tell me that, hey, I'm gonna use my laptop as collateral. I want $10,000. If I loan you to $10,000 at a 1,300% interest rate, no one's regulating that. You owe me
That's private. It's not federally regulated.
So that's exactly what they're doing. They're saying, hey, it's our money. We're loaning it to you, and we're going to give you at $340,000 at a 9% APR on it, and You got solar panels in your house,
I
and
saw-
we're your new lender.
I saw that they were doing. Well, that's the first position. That's the first time I heard about it. But I know of another one where they're actually putting a second mortgage on your house with those things too.
Yeah, I mean, they even have them where you can pay interest-only loans on them.
What?
You only pay the
Oh my
interest in the
God.
hopes that at some point in time you're going to strike it rich and you're just going to be able to dump the whole load of money onto it. The whole financing part needs to be regulated. I'm not sure where the CFPB is, and that's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Yeah.
Like, somebody needs to be investigating this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got into it a little harder. I went to Forbes, and this was an article as early as January 2nd, 2024. And they were saying solar panel costs anywhere from $3,500. I don't see that happening. To $35,000 with an average expense of $16,000. Installation can cost between $15,000 and $25,000. That must be that dealer.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know.
It doesn't break down on their website what the dealer fee is. It just says that if you don't have it, your APR will be higher.
Yeah. You can get 26%. Some people say 30. Some websites say 30 in federal tax credits. I've seen both sites bounce around on those two numbers. Again, this is not a check going to you. Okay. This is just a tax deduction. Okay. So let's go high end. Let's say for a high end system, it's $35,000, and and you get a tax credit of $9,100 up to tax credit. Again, this isn't a check coming to you. What was it? Let's go low end on installation. Let's say like 15 G's, right? So 35 G's on a high-end system and 15 G's on a low-end for install. You're looking at $50,000 all in. That's actually consistent with some of the things I've seen on the debts for some of these people. You guys agree?
Yeah,
Yeah.
50 is a good number.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay, so the solar loan company you did, I went through with an average, also according to Forbes. 4 to 7% interest can go as high as 36%.
Yeah.
Okay. Lenders will also tack on an origination fee on top of the loan. So you're not just going to get $50,000 of solar panel and install costs, and that's it. No, the lender's not done with you yet. Not only do you have to pay interest, you're also going to have to pay some junk fees. Okay. So that could be 1 to 5% of the loan amount, but some solar loans can come with origination fee as high as 30%. Right?
Wow.
So for a $50,000 solar loan, 35 G's for panels and $15,000 for installation, you're looking at an additional finance charge of anywhere from $2,000 upwards to $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, and duration of these loans, they say if secured, meaning the panels themselves are collateral, you could be anywhere from 10 to 30 years for paying for frickin' solar panels. The longer the term of the loan, the less the payment, but the more you'll pay in interest at the end over time. Personal solar loans, meaning there's no collateral, typically have a repayment duration of 1 to 7 years. So that's basically like paying a $50,000 car note on solar panels. Listen, this is a lot to go through to save yourself a $300, $400 electric bill.
Yes. And it ends up being you're paying it. You're saving money on your energy bill, but you're giving it to somebody else. Like, it's the biggest racket being perpetrated right now.
Well, not only that, but the regulations are constantly changing, like with the wind. I mean, I think Hawaii just went, maybe California and Hawaii, where basically with these power brokers, you would reap the energy, sell it back to the power broker at $1, and then they would charge you $1 for same said energy. Well, now it's, I think you reap the energy, you sell it to the power broker at $1 or at 75 cents. They sell it back to you still for the $1. So I think these numbers are shifting and changing, but who knows, man.
All right.
And didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
there.
go ahead, man.
Just to touch up on the whole financing deal, I know that we discussed Good Leap and these adjustable rate, loans that these companies are portraying, but Fannie Mae just came out. I don't know if you guys, your audience is aware. Fannie Mae is our governing
loans.
body, yeah. But anyways, they gave us recent guidelines for the 4 different types of financing. So one, they're owned outright, pay cash up front. They're yours. 2, they're financed, and there's 2 ways to be financed. One being basically permanently affixed to the property, and they're yours, and B being the power brokerage, in which case you don't even own those solar panels. They're still going up on your roof, but the power company still owns them. They're just selling you back that energy that you are recouping. And then the 4th being leased. So we are only even allowed to give contributory value to the homeowners during the appraisal process if they are owned outright or they are being financed as real property. I just wanted to clarify that.
No.
That's
Thanks
good.
For that. No, that's good. But panels themselves, as we discussed, as far as because of the lack of data out there, and a lot of times buyer demand is what's going to drive what people are going to value the most. As buyers, like you guys ask, what is buyers sit down with us during a buyer consultation and say, find me a house with solar panels immediately? No, none of them do. So that's like the last thing that they want. If anything, I've found that they have a lot of questions about that, such as, well, what does it cost to maintain? I don't know. Well, what do I do if I have to replace my roof? Got to find somebody to come down and take them off and pay for that, and then replace the roof. Then pay for somebody to come out and put them back on.
That M word, the big M word, the M word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to keep them clean because they're dirty. They probably won't work as good.
No, the efficiency goes down.
Yeah.
That's why I was chuckling earlier when he was talking. We pull up to a house and we see those 16 or 20 panels on the roof. First thing we ask about the solar panels is, do you own them outright?
Yeah.
When that homeowner says, no, we lease them, it's like, man, I don't have to find any comps or have to explain it all or anything in my report about those solar panels.
But 10 out of 10 buyers or owners, feel that they're given, should be adding value to the home. And so again, I think it's from what we talked about earlier is how they're presenting these solar panels. Not from an energy efficient standpoint. Their number one selling feature is this is going to increase the value of your home, and I think that's a terrible approach. And again, unfortunately, a lot of consumers don't do the due diligence to sit down and go through like we are today, to determine the pros and cons. And with anything you do to your home, I think the first question is always, how long do you intend on being in the home?
Yeah.
And I'll go back to the in-ground swimming pool. Anybody out there that's priced the swimming pool, put in a swimming pool in the last couple of years, what we saw, and we'll talk maybe other market features here soon, but, even as a result of COVID, we started seeing a little bit more of a premium to outdoor living.
Yeah.
To the outdoor kitchens,
People
the
are home
pools,
more.
and you started seeing pool prices go up. The time to get in a pool was a year to 2 years before you could get somebody out there to put it in.
So high demand.
And people are paying, $60,000 to $100,000 for these in-ground swimming pools, and you're not going to get that back in the market. You might get $10,000, you might get $20,000, depending on the neighborhood. But my commentary to individuals that call and say, "Hey, we're thinking about putting in a pool. How much more is it going to increase our value?" My first question is always, how long do you intend on being in the house? Because if you're going to be in the house 10, 15 years, then you're going to get that level of utility out of enjoying the pool, which to me is worth something.
Right.
It's tangible that we've got great usage out of the swimming pool for the last 10, 12 years. Yeah, we might get only 20 back, but I think those other costs are kind of consumed with your enjoyment of the pool, whereas these solar panels where, the typical expectancy of a buyer is, depending on which statistics you go on, 7 to 10 years. They're not going to have these things paid off prior to the time that they decide to sell and move on, assuming that that's just the average. I'm finding a lot more, especially we're in a high military market here in Virginia Beach. A lot of times, they don't anticipate selling, and oh, by the way, they've been transferred, and 3 years in, they're having to leave these, and they've got these solar panels that they still owe $38,000, $40,000 on, and so that's where it becomes. I just look at the numbers, you look at the time, and I think any homeowner should ask themselves before doing anything is how long do we intend on being in the home? Because I think it's always hard for anybody to say by doing X it's going to get you Y. I think there's a lot of conversation in the middle between that X and Y that need to take place before you decide to do anything to your home.
And that's a great point. And I think, even on the other side of that argument, and, we've been sitting here bashing solar panels for
I'm not happy
20
with it.
minutes, but it's all warranted. But the other side of that argument is, there might be a benefit or two if, you're planning on staying in this home for 25, 30 years. If you can do the math and it adds up and, you can recoup that savings in 11, 12 years and pay off these things with the savings over time, and you can clearly see that, then, that there's surely some benefits there. And, I think that solar panels will certainly evolve as well over time. And Pat's probably going to give us his analogy on plasma TVs
Have I
here
not done that already?
coming up. But Elon Musk and Tesla's coming out with, roofing shingles, where it basically is a lot more aesthetically pleasing. And
Yeah, it looks like roof shingles.
yeah, it doesn't, look like just flat black mats on your roof.
How much is that roof going to cost?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit more than a typical solar panel. But Pat, you can go ahead and, and talk about it.
I had an individual that dipped his toe into the solar panel industry, if you will. And his comment to me was, he asked me about my first plasma TV and what I paid for that plasma TV. And I told him $4,000 to $5,000. And he said, how much do you pay for that plasma TV today? And, I told him $500 Sam's Club or wherever. But, it hit me then when he said that. He said, look, in 10, 15 years, these solar panels, they'll be putting them up there for nothing. It's going to be a lot cheaper, and whether the government gets involved and starts,
might even be a part of the building code.
So there's a way for it to be absorbed, but I do think the cost for these solar panels. Look, at $50,000. And when we'd go into these neighborhoods of $300,000 homes and 7 of the houses on the same street, it's like they had a great salesman that hit them all, and whether he gave them a discount. But, from an appraiser's perspective and how we look at it, and look from a marketability perspective as agents, right? What's number one rule in selling a house? Curb appeal. Mm-hmm. It's not rocket science. It's still curb appeal is something that, is very important to the sale of a home in a normal market. Obviously, we've been through some crazy years in the last 3 or 4 years. But, I think from an aesthetic standpoint, sometimes if you got these solar panels on the front of the house, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't add to the curb appeal. And so I think there's so many other little factors that are associated with these. And it goes back to the same original point of, if there's 10 buyers for every home, some buyers might not want the solar panels because of the maintenance, right, because of the way they look on the house. So, and again, but their upfront marketing ploy is it's going to increase the value of your home.
So aside from solar panels, because they're not cheap yet, like the plasma TVs, they're still a little bit pricey. But what can some of our viewers do if they wanted to increase the home value the best way, based on your guys' experience of appraising homes?
I'll retract a little bit.
He's really good at this.
I'm thinking of, so I have 4 daughters, in full disclosure.
Yeah.
So my effective age is a lot older than I actually am. Anybody out there has daughters.
Yeah,
it goes, talking about how you can reduce energy costs and things like that. If I touched the thermostat as a kid, my hand would have been probably broken 3 different ways. Okay. I have 4 daughters, and every time I go down the hallway, it's at a different number, and so I'm getting to the point where I want to put one of those little boxes with the key on it so they can't touch it. So I think there's other ways, obviously, and again, I'm a bad example with 4 daughters and showers and, lights on. But so I think from that standpoint, it'd be more beneficial there if you're that serious about your energy cost, to first apply that approach. But anyway, when we start talking about, things that you can do to increase the value of your home, again, I always think it comes back to those market drivers versus market enhancers and people telling you by doing X, it's going to get you Y. We're only as good as the market. And as agents, when you're doing your CMA, you're only as good as the market. If you've got enough data points, and what I mean by data points is if you've got a neighborhood that has 10 sales that have closed within the last 6 months that walk, talk, and smell just like you, it's easy for us to go in and say, hey, if you do X, it's going to get you close to Y. I think for agents that might be listening to this podcast, I think it's a conversation that you guys as professionals can have because you get that question all the time. Mm-hmm. What can we do to our home to increase the value? I think, again, that first question needs to be, how long do you plan on being there? And oh, by the way, what's important to the buyer within this market, and treat it though that, regardless of whether or not, I can tell you it's going to increase the value. Can I tell you an exact number? I think it's a challenge to give that exact number, but I think if you approach it like, we know it's going to help increase the value of your home, but we also know it's going to enhance your marketability and make you more attractive to your house as opposed to the 2 or 3 that are listed down the street. I think that should be the first approach. But with anything that you do to your home, and from an appraiser's perspective, we've got to find it in the market and be able to kind of isolate it. And, again, back to that scenario of 10 homes that have recently closed, it's easy for us because we can look at the 5 sales that have been completely remodeled and what they're selling for versus the 5 that haven't, and be able to tell you, hey, look, no, I think if you do X, Y, and Z, you remodel the kitchen. Kitchen and baths are still one of the primary drivers for most buyers when looking for a home. I don't think you can go wrong there with upgrading the kitchen, upgrading the bath. Again, if you're going to be in the house, you're going to get the enjoyment out of those factors. But, for investors, and people that are looking to buy and flip, if you will, you're looking at it more from a perspective of, all right, what's the flip product worth? Red apple to red apple. And again, back to my analogy of who's your buyer, I look at it from a standpoint of the same buyer that's looking for a renovated or remodeled product is not also the same buyer that's looking for something that needs TLC. So I think when I do my market analysis or approach, I go by that who's your buyer, what's important to that buyer within the market, and try to use comparables that fit that same bill as opposed to, and quick example, I've had agents that show up to a property and I've got a $400,000 non-waterfront home, and they hand me $600,000 waterfront comps and say, well, if you just back out the money for the water, there's your number. When my comment to them is, well, it's not the same buyer. The same buyer that's looking for a 2,000 square foot home is likely not the same buyer that's looking for a 5,000 square foot home. So there's certain parameters that we go by to kind of be able to identify that buyer, what's important to that buyer, and that's how we derive our adjustments. And that's why I say adjustments change in every appraisal we do. Garages are worth different in certain neighborhoods than other neighborhoods. Pools, the same thing. So, it's more than just, a blanket adjustment for a pool, a blanket adjustment for a bathroom. Every market's different, and every adjustment can be different within that market. I don't know if as agents, when you guys are doing your CMA, are you taking into consideration of, all right, who are we marketing to here, and looking at it from that standpoint?
No, actually, that's really an eye-opening way of looking at it.
We never actually what recently sold and look at their features and bounce them off the subject.
Yeah, but I've never showed up with waterfront properties in order to answer the appraiser on a non-waterfront house.
You'd be surprised.
Waterfront to waterfront. That's it.
But no, I love that. That analogy of putting who's your buyer in the perspective in order to determine what values, what things are going to bring up the value of the house.
Well, and it just brings us back to when I was discussing the paired sales analysis and the sales comparison approach from the appraisal process standpoint. It's very subjective from that standpoint. We very seldom find 10 sales in the subject's immediate market area, immediate neighborhood. So, finding that apple to apple is, almost impossible unless you're in, a condo complex or some very
cookie cutter neighborhood,
conformative neighborhood,
like a Ryan
so
Holmes
speak.
community.
Correct. So it's more red apples to green apples instead of apples to oranges. We're trying to find something as similar as we can to the subject, but there, is certainly some subjectivity and.
Yeah, I always say it's okay to change the shade of apple, just don't change the fruit.
Right.
And so I think that should apply to any homeowner that's thinking about selling their house. And we've heard it, hey, my neighbor just sold down the street for X, and we think should be X plus whatever. And then you look into it, and that house that sold down the street is 500 square foot bigger. It's been remodeled. It's got the pool, the outdoor kitchen, and you're going, well, so I think the same logic applies from an appraiser. I think what we all do in the real estate, whether it's an agent or an appraiser, is roughly the same. And I always get the question of, how ironic is it that the appraisal comes back in at sales price 99% of the time, and I get that kind of that side look. And I always say, well, if the agent did their job correctly, it should be coming in at sales price 99% of the time. As appraisers, we exist for those outliers, for that 1 or 2% that may be paying more than what they should be for certain items. Obviously, again, back to the typical buyer, if you've got a neighborhood that's, and it's typical to have maybe a 1-car garage, but yet you've got a subject property that has a 5-car detached garage, right? To the typical buyer, they're not sitting down with their agent saying, we need a 5-car detached garage. But I recognize that there's a buyer that works on cars, has antique vehicles, and says, honey, stop the car. we need this house. It's got the 5-car detached garage, but I'm in the market to kind of protect them from overpaying for that 5-car, because reality for us, and we kind of lived it in 08, 09 when the foreclosures kind of hit the market, that bank takes that property back. And at the end of the day, that's who we're there to protect. We're the eyes and ears for the lender. Now they're in the market for just finding somebody that strictly needs a 5-car detached garage. And so that's why we're there to protect, on the back end, to say, no, we're there to do it for the typical buyer, what's important to the buyer within this market, and to protect ultimately the lender. I always say the last person on the planet we're out there doing the appraisal for is the listing agent. And that's who we're out there meeting, and that's who they think we're out there for the list, as to represent them, but we're out there to
I always
represent
feel like
the
it's
buyer
going to
and
be
the
a
lender.
chess match. I'm like, nothing gives listing agents more anxiety or high blood pressure than when the appraisal's happening. It's like, oh shit, come on. We just hope that's okay.
Well,
I thought those comps were right. Hopefully they're
and
right.
You know what? And that's why, as any agents that are listening, always meet the appraiser from the simple standpoint that it does add a human element. And if you've got an idea of how you priced it, present it to the appraiser. I get it. I get calls all the time from agents saying, I don't like how that just went down. I didn't feel comfortable with this appraiser, but you need to, you're working on behalf of your client, and to show up and be able to present them the sales and say, hey, this is why we priced it the way we priced it, and give them examples and adjustments of how you came up with your market value, I think goes a long way. I've been doing this 25 years. When I first started, 98% of agents probably met me at the properties. Now it's probably maybe 10% of agents actually meet me at the property when I'm there to do the appraisal. So, I think if anything, from agents listening, meet the appraiser, present them what you have, and have a reasoning for why you price it the way you price it. And again, at the end of the day, it might be just a human element, which you talked about with appraisers. Look, I think bedside manner is important in everything, right? You got a good surgeon, bedside manner is important. As an agent, you guys have to have good bedside manner because you're salespeople.
Right.
I think with appraisers, we're hired by the bank or the lender or the client, and, we're there to give an opinion of value. I do think that here locally we get a big pushback from some appraisers because they don't have that, that bedside manner, and they feel like, as you said, I'm worried, I'm nervous. Look, it's important to these people, especially when we do refinance appraisals. These people are, this refinance can make or break them, whether or not they're able to do it. So, it's nice when you have appraisers that understand and realize that, no, this is a trying time for them, I cringe when I hear an agent call or a homeowner call and say, the appraiser was, he was an ass, and I didn't feel comfortable about it. And I think that's just, we're there to promote public trust at the end of the day as appraisers. With everything happened back in 08, 09 and that fallout, there was a lot of removal of that public trust, and from the agent, we all blamed each other, right? No, it's the lender's fault, it's the agent's fault, it's the appraiser's fault. We're there to promote the public trust. We're there to be that mediator to say, all right, you're getting ready to, we talked about loan and money. We're going to give this couple X amount of thousands of dollars to secure this loan on this house. That's where we come in, to kind of, I always say we're like the weakest link, we get paid the less. But I think it's meant that way for a reason, to where, we don't have as much skin in the game. We don't have the emotion in the game. It's our job to protect the lender and the buyer. And that's kind of the easy way of looking at it. And if you apply that to the solar panels, if we give this considerable amount of money for solar panels, in the appraisal process, and for whatever reason, 10 years down the road, they're not working, we've overinflated the value for this house because it had solar panels, and now, they're null and void. The company's gone out of business. They've just let them go and not working. So I think the important thing to understand here is, yes, we're there to protect the buyer and the lender. And, that's why, when we adjust and make the adjustment process, we try to, be able to isolate it and support it in the market to where when it comes back on us, we can feel comfortable and put our feet in the sand to say, no, this is our estimate of value. It's an opinion. I think that's important to note as well from an appraiser's perspective, but I'm done. I'm exhausted. Brooks, you got anything?
All right, final thoughts. Yep.
Yeah,
What do you
he
got,
said he had
Brooks?
4 daughters. This is like the only time he gets an opinion, so he tends to embellish.
100% true.
But no, I mean we would love to come out and give these people $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 adjustments on these appraisals, for the positive, towards their overall value, market value for these solar panels. But it's not feasible now. We just don't have enough data to say that, these two properties are selling $20,000 more than these two properties just because of the solar panels. A, they're not popular enough. We don't have enough data, and B, it's just very difficult to extract that market reaction.
And not any buyer that I've ever come across even wants them.
Right.
And that's the answer. I mean, simply put, that's the answer, because demand, look, supply and demand in real estate is it. And that demand side of it, if you've got buyers that, there's no demand for the solar panels, when they're out looking at properties, you're just not going to see an increase in value because of those solar panels, because that buyer's just not willing to pay the additional money for those solar panels.
Yeah.
The typical buyer.
Yeah, I think agents are going to play a major role in the fate of these solar panels moving forward. If you guys can dissect what they're actually doing for the consumer, what they're doing for the buyers, these homeowners, and put them on your listings, your MLS sheets, we can actually use that and dissect it and put it forth on our appraisals.
Well, Brooks, if it's up to me, I'll kill the solar panels.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
As much heartache as I've seen
get behind it.
Yeah, as much heartache and how much it complicates the real estate transaction, I can't ever endorse it. It's just it's terrible for homeowners, man. Absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
What are your final thoughts, Joshua?
That's it. It's a horrible idea. Don't do it. That's my final thought.
It just doesn't add up.
No.
It seems like
Simple math.
A lot to go through to save for a little electric bill when you can turn down the AC units, put more insulation in your attic, get some LED light bulbs. I mean,
Keep your daughter from touching the thermostat.
Yeah, put a rock on the thermostat.
I mean, bidets help to dang on save trees, but you don't have salesmen coming in your house trying to sell you bidets.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Buy this asshole washer.
Yeah.
It's work out really well.
Come on. No.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and hit subscribe. Leave a comment below. Oh, agents out there and solar panel enthusiasts alike, let me know your comments below. What do you think? If you have a scary story of solar panels, we want to hear about it. Leave a comment below. Again, like the video, follow us. Thanks for watching. See you soon.